Hello and welcome to the special edition of Unification Day. My name is Dennis Jai and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Happy Unification Day to all Liberians and friends of Liberia around the globe. This is focused on Liberia's special Unification Day special, and we want to welcome all of you across the globe. With me in co-hosting is my man, Anthony Sia. Mr. Sia, welcome to Focus on Liberia Independence Day special or Unification Day special.
Dennis, thank you. I'm happy to be here with this outstanding panelist to discuss unification in Liberia on this Unification Day. I think it's a very significant topic for us to discuss, and I'm happy to be here.
Also joining us for Unification Day is the host of the Literary Hour, or the co-host, Ms. Jackie Sayer. Jackie, welcome and happy Unification Day.
Happy Unification Day to everybody, and I'm very happy to be here, Dennis.
We also want to welcome to this Unification Day special our democracy analyst, Mr. Josiah F. Joker. He's also head of the American branch of GIM. Joe, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much. Happy Unification Day to everyone, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Joining us from the liberal state of Massachusetts is Reverend Tori Kura. Reverend Kura, welcome and happy Unification Day.
Thank you very much. I hope we are unified.
Last but not the least is my comrade from a proud alumnus of Waplo Institute from Kilipo, Kanwiyeken. Joining us from Philadelphia, Mr. Muhammad Sharif. Comrade Sharif, happy Unification and Integration Day.
Thanks for having me. I hope that we were unified. Unfortunately, we are not. So this is an important, looks to be an important conversation.
Thank you. Unification Day, and Jackie, you just did a literary hour and you even touched on unification. So I'm going to go around the room. Let's just get your intro comment on the significance of this day. And I want us to start from there. This is Unification Day. I don't know how many people know about Unification Day. I got maybe 1 or 2 persons from Liberia wish me Unification Day. This is unlike any other day. To what extent, I mean, what do we really know about your Unification Day, and what have been your fond memory of Unification Day back in Liberia, if there has been any?
Well, I know that we have activities that kind of bring us together as a people. I know that I guess the first Unification Day was 1947, I think, but it was passed as an act, and then it was passed in 1960. But I think that people tend to rank holidays, and Unification Day somehow falls low on the ladder when it should really be one of the primary holidays, because it is essential at this point in our nation's history that we come together as one people. So I think it's a very important day, and I think it should be celebrated exactly as they say, integration and unification.
Yeah. Reverend Kura?
Yes. So for me, I really don't recall celebrating Unification Day when I was in Liberia. But what I know is that Liberia is not unified, and therefore we really cannot be celebrating something that doesn't exist. Our country needs unification. Our country needs integration. However, we cannot get to those places of integration and unification until we have a rebirth of our country. Our country was not started as a democracy. It was not started to bring people together. It was started in a way that has contributed to where it is today. So it's like a seed that was sown, and now we are reaping the fruit. We are not united, and we need to be united before we celebrate Unification Day.
Joe, happy Unification Day. What's your memory of Unification Day in Liberia? And even here?
Interestingly, I don't recall a day that I was part of a celebration under the umbrella or the banner Unification Day celebration. I heard through proclamation from presidents that the day was set aside in keeping with the statute, the 1960 statute, to celebrate, unification. I really wish we were unified as a nation because Unification Day is always the eve of my birthday. That would probably give me a better birthday celebration on May 15th. But unfortunately, we are not a unified nation. The factors that's supposed to underpin unification, we've lacked them from our birth as a country. We were established on a divisive platform, and so from that time we've had entrenched division in our country. And so unification doesn't have any real meaning for now. It is only national governments, successive governments that try to give a reflection of what unification is supposed to be. But the reality is that we can actually be unified around the real human security issue, where everyone have a sense of belongingness to the country. And that before that happens, there has to be equity in all spheres of our national existence. That is lacking. So, in my opinion, we are not a unified nation. We are not there yet. You only have events characterized by fun and pageantry. The vast majority of the people are not even aware of what unification is, even though it's been around for about 60 years. So
Thank you.
it's quite unfortunate that we can be few Liberians, maybe in the Monrovia area, usually remember the day and say happy unification to each other when actually there's no happiness about the so-called unification day.
Comrade Sharif, you started this.
Yeah, so the prologue of Liberia's foundation, the country was erected on the structure of unevenness. So there's sort of inequality of the social classes. And so fast forward to 1945, when voting rights was extended to the interior. So basically, voting rights is extended to the hinterland. And voting rights was limited to those who own houses. And then in the following year, in 1946, voting rights became extended to women. So when you look at that, and those who advocated for this sort of reform can then say, well, we unified the country in that sense. Um, in 1964, right? So when the counties of Grand Jada, Nemba County, Lofa County, and I believe another county, or there are four counties that were founded in created in 1964. Bon County,
County.
right? Bon County was created in 1964. Um, my father told me there was no motor road prior to 1964 going down to the interior. So what you have as a means of transportation were individuals who carry um, people like my father, the chiefs, on their shoulders, and they were paid money. So President William V.S. Tubman decided that one of the ways to unite the hinterland to Monrovia was to one, not only create counties, but to also build motor roads. So, if in that sense, if people want to celebrate Unification Day, I guess that's their justification of looking at unification. But in my characterization of unity, there's much more to be done. So I hope over the course of this discussion, we can get to some of these issues,
Yeah,
some of these
definitely.
tribal and religious divisions.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, we say happy Unification Day. And on this day, um, is supposed to be for unification and integration. So I'll go to my man as soon as here just to walk us through some history, how this thing got started, and we will open the floor for discussion. Mr. Sie, you got some history you want to share with us?
Yeah, I want to share some history on unification, but before I can share that story, I just want to say, like many of you, the war unification has been around for so long. All I see most of the time is announcement coming from just about every president from the time the unification came into being, informing Liberians of a unification day celebration. But I don't know what it actually means. But let me bring you the history of unification. So sometimes called Integration Day. This day marks the unification and integration policy, which was aimed at tackling political, social, and economic disparities with the country. The Republic of Liberia began as a settlement of the American Colonization Society, ACSS, who believed Black people would face better chances for freedom in Africa than in the United States. Between 1822 and 1861, thousands of free Blacks were relocated to the settlement at Cape Masurado on the Pepper Coast of West Africa. This influx of people who had control over power in the country created a feeling of animosity and exclusion from the native inhabitants of the region, who are the majority in Liberia. When William V.S. Tubman, the father of modern Liberia, became president of Liberia in 1944, he decided to address the social and political imbalance between the Americo-Liberians and the indigenous. In his inaugural address, Tubman introduced his national unification policy, which featured, among other things, an extension of the vote to women and to the country's indigenous people. The day was first proclaimed as a national holiday on May 14, 1947, to recognize the benefits that the unification and the integration policy brought to the country, and Act was passed in 1960. So the holiday is proclaimed by the President of Liberia a few days before May 14 each year. So as a consequence of this year, 2021, President Weah, in his proclamation, talked about something like the principles of justice, equality, fair play, and equal opportunities for all, regardless of tribe or clan, section, creed, religion, economic status, should mark this year's celebration. Those are key words there. And the question is, of all these pronouncements, are we unified as a people? Have we come to realize any of these things that are called for in the Unification Act that was passed in 1960? Dennis?
Thank you so much, Anthony. So we've heard from Asunesia. So today, what we're going to be looking at, first, we want to look at a little bit of history, which Anthony did already. So we're going to touch a little bit on that. Then we look at the purpose of the unification and integration holiday. What are some of the questions I want us to answer tonight? Are we unified as a nation and as people? Do we participate in actions and activities that serve as agents for cohesion? Last but not the least, where are we with unification integration 61 years since this first holiday was celebrated? Gentlemen, let me start with Mr. Jokai to walk us through some history. What I want us to look at is, why was this day selected? What were some of the things? I know Comrade Sharif gave credence to it earlier. What were some of the things that were happening at that time that precipitated or that needed for us to have this day called unification and integration? So let's start with that, and then we go into the purpose, and then we assess whether we are unified as a people.
Firstly, we've all, all the panelists have emphasized that we're not a unified nation. And this did not happen overnight. This is tied into our history, the establishment of our country by settlers in 1822. And we know exactly the tussle that existed for a very long time between the settlers and the indigenous. That divide existed. It defined our politics. And for so many years, the majority of the people were considered subjects in their own country, not even having any sense of belongingness as citizens of their own country because they were not part of the decisions that were made to affect their lives in terms of participating in elections until the 1940s, as was just read in the history. That was a complete period of subjugation, of marginalization. Yet the pronouncement made by Topman, did actually set the stage for some form of integration. But having people to have rights to vote is just the beginning of their participation in the processes that lead to good governance. But they should have a greater role beyond just casting ballots. They should have a voice through their representatives, and they should understand the essence of their citizenship, and they should realize the benefits of that. That was never the case, and to a large extent, even in this 21st century, that has not been the case. So it has been really an illusion that we keep celebrating Unification Day when the essence of the integration or unification was about celebrating the progress of the nation. So if you ask the specifics in terms of what progress have we made, that we are so proud, a group of proud people, a nation that makes significant progress, that we have to be celebrating every May 14, because every May 14, the government should be like accounting for what constitute our unification.
Yeah.
Telling us what progress we've made towards making education accessible and affordable. That was not the case. That has not been the case for the vast majority of the people. Making healthcare accessible and affordable. That has not been the case because you have to be united around those human security issues, like I said.
Sure.
Employment creation, whether we have a vibrant private sector that is created by a triple P arrangement with successive governments. That has not been the case in our nation. Government has been seen as the largest employer, which should not be the case. And that's how you always saw from the past to now cronies, family members of successive governments, forming the circle of the elites at the disadvantage of the majority of the people in the country. So people cannot be poor in their own country, even consider having refugee or internally displaced status in their country in slums, and other people are enjoying the benefit of the resources of the country. And then you talk about national unification. No, that is not possible. So that is why we're not unified. And we have to go back to those things to have a sense of renewal as a country, to depart from the more than a century and a half existence of division and inequality in the country. There has to be a sense of renewal, for us to start talking about unification and integration as far as the purpose of the Statute of 1960 is concerned, because that's the overarching objective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll come to whether we are unified or not, because and Jackie, I really want to disagree with most of you a little bit about that we are not united, even though we'll come to that. But I was asking for, what was happening at that time. Okay, the country was just 5 counties, or 5 original counties. So even adding those counties and having more people included, that was a big step in unification, because the purpose of the unification was we had one group of people leading the country and other people as a sub. In fact, to become a Liberian, that meant something else. Indigenous were not considered Liberians until later. So the process of integration, unification started at least gradually, even before Tadma. So we can't really say we were not united. Jackie, let's look at the purpose of the unification. We may not have all we need, but if we look at the purpose, we are somewhere. Oh, sorry, Jackie. There was a background. Yeah, go ahead.
When we had the discussion about an hour ago, we talked about the fact that in the letters that Joseph Jenkins Roberts wrote to the Senate, he was explaining. He said to them that the legislature had brought in some of the traditional chiefs to learn from them, to deliberate with them. We are not saying that the past in Liberia was not one of inequality and maybe some horrific happenings. What we are saying, I guess I must be an outlier here, because as a historian, I've seen, we've discussed these letters. We've discussed how the slave trade affected Liberia. We've discussed so many things. I'm more interested in going forward, because yes, we have to address the past, but we also have to have a transformed Liberia. And that transformation will come when we have a shared but unified identity. What is happening now is because we don't have this identity as a nation, is that the identity that we have is tied with our ethnic group. Oh, I'm Grebo, oh, I'm Bai. We take more pride in that because we feel a sense of belonging, and we do not feel a sense of belonging in this national hierarchy. We don't feel that we are part there. But what I'm saying is that although we come from different places, the things that brought us there was what? Migration. The commonality of migration can be something that we can share. Because, like, one of the things, like in Rwanda right now, right? You cannot say, are you a Tutsi or are you a Hutu, right? It's frowned upon, because they say they want you to be one. You must answer, I'm Rwandese. No, I feel like you should not submerge your identity. You can say, I am Bai, but a Liberian. And so until we get this shared identity, that will come when we have a frank discussion of what has happened, that it was 100 years after independence, before indigenous people got the right to vote. You and I read these letters, and these letters were written by Gardner, saying that, oh, we took land from Bassa, we took land from Kepamas. So we know that they took land and did this. What we're saying is, like the African Union said, we cannot go back and redraw the boundaries. We will have to accept these imposed boundaries. Liberians cannot go back and remake the history. These things happen. They happen. What we need is a frank discussion that it happened, and then we say, this critical juncture where we are, where do we go? That is the discussion we should be having. Where do we go as a nation, and what is each person's place in transforming this country? That is what we should be discussing.
Thank you, Jackie. Let me come to you, Reverend Kura. I see that you want to jump in. I have something for you here quickly. We can all agree about the past, the exclusion, how some natives were not, most natives were not allowed to go to schools at some point. The exclusion, there's no debate about it. All right. But in today's Liberia, the number of counties, people are participating. We have more natives in government, representatives, now senators, and all that, presidents. Everybody goes to the University of Liberia now. You can't go to University of Liberia because you don't have a Johnson name. Are you still saying that we have not achieved any form of integration or unification, Reverend Crow?
You reap what you sow.
Okay.
Today, Liberia is no different from the Liberia of 1944, or even the Liberia of 1847, or the Liberia of 1822. Today, the top opposition politicians in Liberia have access to the United States in terms of education. They got homes in the United States. Our position, the top ruling party politicians in Liberia have access to the United States in terms of where their children go to school, etc. The top independent candidates in Liberia have access to this country. We, the people of the Republic of Liberia, do not have any, we have not been able to actually experience equal opportunities at all. A few days ago, there was Ramadan was celebrated in Monrovia and around the world. And yet we see that even people who are of a different religion in Liberia do not feel the same as being of one nation. In this country, there is, to an extent, equal opportunities. So the same thing that happened before, in 1944, in 1822, etc., continues today because of the seed that was sown. We need to have, the flag we have does not even represent us. Our capital city, Monrovia, does not represent us. Bourgeois Island, Bushra, and I disagree with you with the introduction that the American colonization society were people who believe that Africa, black people will have a better chance in Africa. No, the American colonization society was made in large part of people who believed black people were inferior and therefore they could not become citizens of the United States by law. March 26, 1790, the law says only white people will be citizens of the United States. And so those people like Joseph Jr. Roberts or even Spruce Peen, who were almost white because they had a drop of blood. So I'm talking about opportunities now for Liberian people today. And the same issue we had over there is still happening today because there's unemployment across Liberia. There is abject poverty, and still the politicians we have, they make more money than politicians in the United States. In Rhode Island, we just have a Liberian who was elected member of the Rhode Island legislature, $15,000 a year. In Monrovia, we got $15,000 a month. In Rhode Island, the state budget is $10 billion. I mean, we are in the same spot, so far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the livelihood of people. We need rebirth, like Ghana, like Rhodesia. When they became independent, they changed the name from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. In Ghana, they changed the name from Gold Coast to Ghana, but we still have Monrovia. James Monroe was a slave trader who never freed one slave. So
thank you.
Why should we sit today and think there's opportunity or we should celebrate? We should not celebrate until we have rebirth of our country, and we can do it just how other countries have done it.
Thank you. Let me go to you, Mohammed. What was the proclamation, the Unification Day proclamation? What was it meant to accomplish? What was the purpose? Because I don't want us to deviate, or kind of make it look like Unification Day is supposed to solve all our problems. So look at the purpose of the Unification Day and what it has accomplished.
The purpose was to accomplish just like it stated. The purpose was to bring Liberians together more. The the proponents of the proclamation believe that by setting aside this day, it will bring some sort of spotlight on the unification of Liberia. But as other speakers have said, we're not united. And one thing Jackie mentioned was the fact that the idea that we need to move forward. Moving forward, I couldn't agree more. However, even in this present day, we are not united in the sense of real unification and integration. We all have our own, predispositions. So, for example, if I say, my name is Mohammed Sharif, and I go to a checkpoint, and the immigration officer says, "Oh, Mohammed Sharif, where are you from?" All I have to say is, "I'm from Nimba County," or "I'm from Grand Gita County," and he's ready to ask me a question about, "Oh, do you know who the first superintendent for Grand Gita was? Who was the first superintendent of Grand Gita County?" Now, how you going to ask me who the first superintendent is when you don't even know the current superintendent of Nimba County? When you don't even know the current member of the House of Representatives from Grand Gita County? So how are you going to quiz me? But there are other members of other ethnic groups who are with me at this checkpoint that you're not, are not being apportioned the same number of questions. So even up to present day, we have activities, dispositions. We look at others as, these are foreign. But I would submit to you that Liberia was or Liberia is the product of immigration. So no one on this panel would tell me that their great ancestors did not migrate from somewhere. No one on this panel would tell me that everyone else just, parachuted on the soil of Liberia or germinated from the, from Mother Earth. Nobody. So we each come from somewhere. So let's begin with an acknowledgement that our great ancestors might have come from the Mali Empire. Some of our ancestors might have come from Guinea, Ivory Coast. We all know that. Dennis, you've traveled a lot, just like myself, in the West African region. We know people who in Liberia told us they didn't know anywhere besides Liberia. We met them in places like Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone. And we know that they have family members in these places. So why are we pretending as Liberians that, certain group of people are foreigners? Let's look at, the so-called American Liberians. These are our brothers and sisters who return home. So I believe in this sort of, Pan-Africanist concept so that we accept one another. Our brothers and sisters came back home. So our duty, their desire to come back home and live should be welcome.
Thank you.
And they at the same time should have, accepted those they met as brothers and sisters. So I don't believe, for example, finally, I don't believe that unification and integration are achievable objectives. What I believe is that there should be laws, right? A judicial system, a justice system that will let me know that my rights, I have rights. That Jackie has rights. That Dennis has rights. Everyone else on this panel have rights, right? So the fact that we set aside a day, to me, is a waste of resources. What we need is an investment in a clear judicial system, laws that will protect minorities like myself, laws that will protect the majority, the rights of the majority, the rights of the minority, right? So if you look at Liberia right now, so we're talking 15 counties. There's not one Mandingo who is a superintendent because this is a very toxic issue. The president cannot do it because the next day he might be out of office. There is not a Mandingo who is a senator. Maybe there are two who are in the House of Representatives. So we all have. So it's not just the government. We can't just point to the government.
Right.
We each have our own.
And we'll come to that very, very soon as to what are some of the things that we think are missing. But let me go to Joe to speak about the purpose of the act a little bit more. Joe, the purpose of unification integration.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in a little bit to say that Mohammed is partly right about all of us coming from different places, migrating and coming to this place called Liberia. But I think the significant thing to consider here is the fact that we are all under the umbrella called Liberia. And the most important thing that we should keep our eyes on is going forward regarding how we can initiate a rebirth conversation that is frank and effective in a way that people will begin to rethink their attitude towards the country, their attitude towards their own citizenship in terms of their understanding. That's what we need to do. What we need to make our government to understand in terms of their role and holding accountable so that we can resolve this issue of inequality in our country and address the issue of identity so that we're not just continuously lost, along the way. So the purpose of the act in that regards was to address our social, economic, and political situation to have progress of our nation in that respect. And that is why I keep saying that the day May 14 is just ceremonial. It's a day where we all supposed to have a reflection to take a stock whether or not we've made progress over the years in those areas, making sure that we have an environment that provides, the participation in economic activities, the opportunities for citizens, making sure that there's social justice, the justice system works for everybody. That's the kind of thing we're supposed to be doing on Unification Day, to show that, yes, Liberians have integrated, irrespective of which tribe you come from. We see ourselves as Liberians. We go beyond our ethnicity and look at that national identity that we have as Liberians. I just wanted to add that I think it is in the spirit of that the act was instituted.
Thank you. Mr. Sear? Oh, Mr. Sear, you are muted. Unmute yourself, please.
Dennis, thank you. There's something I need to read here. So let me do that quickly, and then we can continue with the conversation. Let me make it bigger here. So this was William V.S. Thomas' second inaugural address in 1952. To effect this, we shall engage in and strive at the assimilation and unification of our various populations composing the body politics. Liberia must be a place for all Liberians to live in alike, or to stand equally privileged. All classes of our people must be made to fuse and coalesce into a solid whole. We deem it to be of the highest national importance and most appropriate at this time to call for national unity and sovereignty. We have consistently and insistently pursued the policy of unification. It has been proved in our lifetime that the civilized population cannot get along without the uncivilized. Neither can the uncivilized population get along without the civilized. That neither element can exterminate the other. We must now destroy all ideologies that tend to divide us. Americo-Liberianism must be forgotten, and all of us must register a new era of justice, equality, fair dealing, and equal opportunities for everyone part of the country, regardless of tribe, clan, section, element, creed, or economic status. If any person, civilized or uncivilized, oppose the unification of this nation, he is an enemy of the state. I guess that where that word enemy of the state came from.
And enemy of the state did not start today. We still had enemy of the state who opposed unification. Jackie, what's your reaction? That was as soon as I was waiting for you to read that in your Tadma voice. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh yeah, you didn't alert me. No, I would have done that. Jackie, can you read that in the Tadma verse? Go ahead.
Jackie, your reaction to that inaugural address.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Well, you know that although he said that, we in the literature we found out that things weren't as rosy as he said, right? Because even with the literature, in order to promote his unification policy, all of the literature and the art that came out of that time, right, was promoted. And those that went against the unification policy, like the imprisoned native, Jaina Mo, but Condola, the missing recognition of Condolia.
Yeah.
That one was also frowned upon because it was a satire of what was happening in the town. So we know that. Dennis, what I would like to say is that we have been going through a lot of the letters. We've been going through a lot of the letters of the freed people who returned. And one thing I would like to bring to talk about is that these people, of course, the ACS, we said that the American colonization name was the American colonization for the movement of colored people from America. So it had a long name, and we read the fact that they were saying that these people cannot live among us. If I may read it again, he said, if I were a colored man, I would not hesitate a moment to leave this country where Black people face prejudice because human nature is radically changed. And he goes on that the Black skin is held in the lowest degree of degradation. So these people, you know that some of them even petitioned to be sent to Mississippi to live there because they didn't want to go to Africa. So what I'm saying is that we always talk about the past, as we should. You know, it shows where we are coming from. But I am saying there are other countries that have moved ahead. There have been other countries that have put things in place to move the country forward.
Yeah.
Our conversation now must be, what are the commonalities that bind us? It must be that we must look for those commonalities to move the country forward. And as an educator, I say one of the best ways would be for the young people, national service. In Ghana, they have national service. You finish college, if they pay for you or not, you do national service. The same thing in Zambia. Where I'm working, when the kids come, they are so proud of that. That, oh, this is my national certificate from Ghana. This is my national certificate from Zambia. We are losing our children because there is really no moral core that holds the country together now. It's like, if you have money, yeah, everything goes. If you are to train young people for love of country, for civic education, I say maybe this May 14, maybe you don't want it to be a National Unification Day, but it should be a day, like a process where we put strategies in place to unite the nation. You know, that is what it should be. This conversation should be about uniting the nation. Yes, we can't go back and change the past, as I said, but we can unite the nation going forward. And that's the thing we should be discussing right now.
Yeah, and we're coming to that. But let me throw in something that National Unification Day. I don't want us to make this like you guys look like, especially building on what you said, it should be everybody's responsibility, even though government take the lead. But we are talking about national unification, right? So the purpose was to integrate and unite the country. But sadly, in 1979, we had a rice riot, which was the ruled and the rulers clashing over rights and other and rights. In 1980, we have a coup, country woman, native woman born soldier, Congo woman born rule. People were killing each other because of class. That should, to me, show we're not unified. Also, we have 1989, a coup, an invasion to revenge the 13 people that were killed, and then the coup of 1980. Then 1983, we had Nimba Ray, now it's Grand Jere versus Nimba. 1985, we have the Kwangwa invasion, and then the big one, 1989, was the coup. Now, the invasion. And now we still have, now it's Southeastern. You know, you find that minority ethnic groups like the Mandingos in Nimba County or other parts of Liberia, sometimes in Bon County, if I can recall, there are still signs that we are not integrated. They're still fighting. That brings me to the question to say, why do we have integration and unification and these things continue to happen? What's responsible? Let me start with Reverend Kura. I don't know, what are you going to link this to the Bible?
Oh yeah, Matthew 12:33 said, "Make the tree good, and its fruits will be good. Make the tree corrupt, and the fruits shall be corrupt. The tree is known by its fruits." I think that I agree with Sister Jackie for us to move forward, but in moving forward, there's something that is missing. What is missing is that the people need to be the architect of their own destiny. In 1847, in 1822, in even in 1944, what President Tubman was talking about civilized and uncivilized, those type of things. All of these things point to denigration of culture, denigration of religion, denigration of the people, and beginning with the denigration of the color of the skin of people by people who can't even make the color of a person's skin. I think what we need to do in moving forward is to call for a national sovereign conference where we come together for the rebirth of our country. New symbols, new laws, everything. Currently, the citizens, citizens don't even have access to the ballot in Liberia. It's all for people who have more money. we need to change that. We need to change the whole constitution, because today the reason why a senator makes $15,000 in Liberia and a senator makes something else is that the people, we say it is a democracy, but it's not really a government of the people. It's a government of the ruling elite. They make the law, and there is nothing you can do if they're not happy with the law. That's the fact. So the Constitution needs to be changed, but it cannot be changed by me or you. We need a sovereign national conference where we come together, look at the symbols, look at our laws we have, and try to start afresh. We can do it. That's what other countries have done. There's no need for us to keep going, hoping that this seed that was sown a long time ago is going to change and start bearing something else when we sow different. And the last thing I want to say is that the United States of America, the colonial power of Liberia, has to acknowledge its role in that country. Today, as I'm speaking to you, there are over 6,000 Liberians living in the United States who don't have permits to work, who came here because of a war that was plotted right here in the United States. On its responsibility, what it saw in Liberia, it was an act of Congress that passed the law to say only white people will be citizens. It was an act of Congress that provided the money. It was an act of Congress that authorized the Navy. And the United States government has to pay damages for the state of affairs in that country as we try to put the country together.
Thank you. Mr. C.A., I listed some events, right? And I'm asking the question, based on these events, are we unified as a people? Do we have the unification that President Tubman dreamed about and proclaimed this day? Where are we?
Then there's something Joker was saying earlier. In order to achieve unification, we have to be unified by the common basic immunities of the human population in Liberia, talking about the material well-being of the Liberian people. These are the things, among other things, we have to be unified by. He gave an example of education. How are we giving a kind of education to our citizens, the entire population, irrespective of what village that is? Are we providing that? Because we are teaching the very same kind of concept in terms of education. If all are getting the same education at the same time based on the ages, then we are uniting our country. The same can be said about transportation. We're talking about roads today. My county, Grand Crew, has a code name called Grand Walking County. All right? Whereas other counties that are closer to Monrovia, they are having it easier. So are we united in terms of transportation? Somebody will say, no, we are not united. So then you come to the issue of politics in terms of equal participation. Now, you gave the power to the president to decide who becomes superintendent. So that group of people, they don't have equal participation as to who becomes their leader. So these are the kind of issues that I think will help to unify the country. The issue of justice, we have to be unified on that. But today, if you look in Liberia, if you don't have a deeper pocket, you will not get justice. Even if you show up to a court, Dennis, if there is a clerk there that's supposed to tap whatever statement you have to make, you have to get something. It's done openly. These are the issues that divide people or further apart. Because if I don't have that money, I'm living with that anger. And talking about the war that we just experienced, have we been able to get to the bottom of what led us to war? We have a TRC report that is read that we are not acting on that report to unify our country, hold individuals accountable who contributed to the carnage that we experienced. So Dennis, when you look at it, we are not united. In order for us to be united, it has to be on the issues that improve our material well-being. And we know in Liberia, the disparity is so huge. So until we focus on that, we will not get that unification that we're talking about.
And Jackie, who business it is to make sure that we have unification and integration? And this is the question I want also go around the room. Like as I said, where are we with unification, and who's supposed to make sure that these things are accomplished? Jackie, let me start with you.
I think it behoves every one of us, except that we do not have the power per se. So then it entails political will. You know, the government per se must want it, and we as a people must walk along with them to guide them and let them give us the power to be able to effect change. I'll give you an example, right? The TRC report in South Africa. Many people say, oh, but some of the people, even the police chief, I guess, who went to prison, right? He was freed after a while. And he said, but the people didn't suffer. But the TRC had two different types, right? When you would come and you would confess and you would be sorry, and they would ask the parent, what do you want to see? If the parent says, I just want to know where my child is buried, that's all I want, and I forgive this person, that's what they do, right? So the question they ask them, what can you live with? You will never have 100% healing. You will never have 100% perfect background. What it is that you can live with. In Zambia, people always say, oh, you like to, yes, I travel, so I see it. They had community meetings. What should we do? That is why Victoria Falls is called Masiotonia, the smoke that thunders, because they decided as a group, as a people, right? And that is what happens. If you remember the South African Constitution, they said it's one of the first constitutions that is good, but they never had a referendum, right? They had community villages meeting. What can you live with? Can you live with this? What can you live with? And that's how they built grassroots organization that's steer this new constitution. Because if you remember, they already had the charter, the Freedom Charter from the ANC. So those people already knew where they wanted to go as a nation. And so when they were going to to create the constitution, they brought the Freedom Charter. Liberians have to have a frank discussion. Where do we want to go as a nation? Do we want to look at past hurts, or do we want to move forward? I agree with Tori. We need new names. We've been saying that forever. We need a new flag. That bastardized version of the flag is not a reflection of the people. We have to come together for new symbols, new names, new reclamation. But when you say, how do we go? We start with each one of us having a frank discussion within ourselves, because this unity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Each one of us responsible for this unity. When you see somebody and you say, oh, look at that person, and you start to castigate that person or to look down, that's disunity from the ground up. So as Liberians, we need a frank discussion. Where do we want to go? How do we get there? What can we do to get there? And I think that as we talk more about or transform Liberia, we will get there. It may take a while, but we will get there. So I think that if you say, where should we start? It starts from each and every one of us. Some of us are not in Liberia, Dennis, but we look at social media. Look at the hate that's on social media. Look at the insults that's on social media. You're not in Liberia, but you still have this hate, So I say that you have to have a frank discussion with yourself and see where it is you want to go as a person. Then before you can really start to help the country. As for the government, they should have the political will to say something is not working in our country. Because if they do not have this meeting, and if nothing happens, if God forbid there's a war, it will be worse. Because Liberians kill Liberians. No foreign troops came to Liberia to kill. It was Liberians killing Liberians. So we do need this discussion.
Thank you. And Ms. Mohammed, you made a comment earlier that like unification is really irrelevant, if I may paraphrase. All we need is justice, is fair play, is equality, and so forth and so on. What I see also is because there's division, right? For instance, we have a civil war, I call it the uncivil war, that branched into a tribal ethnic cleansing. At the end of it, you have someone like Prince Johnson say, I did this because I was protecting my people. And you have almost 80% of Nimba County say, yes, this was our protector, and we're going to make sure we vote for him over and over. You touch Prince Johnson, you touch me. We have someone like Alhaji Krumah, when they say Krumah war crime court, 80% of Mandingo say is our liberator. You can't touch him. If you touch Judge Bole, 90% of the people in Grand Jada or Crown people will say this was the man who. So what I'm driving at is, even though we all look at unification, we try to hold government or people in power responsible, but even as ethnic groups, we are divided and we protect our own little devils. What's your take? And I'll go to you, Joker, and then we move on.
So one of the first thing I want to push back on is this whole idea of changing our national symbols, our names, and so on and so forth. I do not um, believe that that is the only thing that we can do to bring about unification. So, these national symbols, right, they do mean something for me as a Mandingo person. I know that it was the love of liberty, the love of commerce, right? If I may add that, that led my ancestors to depart the Mali Empire, to come down to um, the coast of Guinea, to migrate to Liberia, present day Liberia, because there was no Liberia at the time, there was no Guinea at the time. Um, so to do away with these symbols is doing away with part of our history. So in order to look forward, you have to look behind. So history tells us, right, what we can do, but we have to also look back. So a destruction of these symbols is similar to something that we saw in 1980. So when Torbo was assassinated, you have monuments, you have playgrounds, you have areas that were destroyed by the military junta because whatever Torbo did should never ever be seen again. And now we continue to do that. So I don't believe in that. So one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is our own disposition. Look at ourselves. So unification should begin with our own realization that we all came from somewhere. Let us each in ourselves believe or come to the realization that this nation called Liberia was not just sitting there with people who don't have a history. So to do so, to believe that these people came from nowhere is really an affront on history. I submit to you that these people that Pedro de Centra met, these people who were taken to the United States and Europe as slaves, they came from somewhere. So let us begin by understanding that. So it's not just the Mandingos, it's not just the American Liberians. We each came from somewhere. So now, when we talk about unification and integration, to me, it's very evasive the way we talk about it right now. So what are we trying to achieve? One of the panelists mentioned. So when you talk about unification, what is your goal? What do you think you want to see as you know what does so in other words, what does unification mean for you? What does integration mean to you? Right? So President Topman, right, women were not allowed to vote before the presidency of William V. S. Topman. Indigenous Liberians could not vote. If you were uh, 30 years old or whatever and you didn't own a house, you were not allowed to vote. So I guess for William V. S. Tubman, the fact that under his administration, voting rights was extended to women. Voting rights was extended to the newly created counties. For William V. S. Tubman, model roads were now constructed from Monrovia to the interior. That brought about a sense of uh, connectedness, if you will, from the coastal belt to the interior. So for Tubman, I guess that means unification. But if you ask me, what does that mean for you? It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It means that, Mr. Tubman, you're doing your job to connect your citizens by motor road, okay, by means of coming to Monrovia, by means of coming to the major cities and towns. it does not mean much for me in terms of unification, because I still believe that there are people who are left behind. We're talking, this is 2021. We're still talking about the American-Liberian Native divide. And then within the Native population, we're talking about who is a foreigner. Is he a Mandingo? Is he a Vai? Is he a Gola? Where is he from? In Sierra Leone, when I traveled to Sierra Leone during the Civil War, I was at a town called Mobai in Kaila Home District. And at the court session, before the court commenced, the first thing that the judge asked was to have the Lord's Prayer. And after the Lord's Prayer, the judge also asked that someone should read the Al-Fatiha. The Al-Fatiha is the opening chapter of the Holy Quran. So what I'm saying here is that in Sierra Leone, it's a tradition that when you have the Lord's Prayer, anytime you have the Lord's Prayer said, you have to have something read from the Quran. In Sierra Leone, you have the president who is a Christian. You have the vice president who is a Muslim. In Guinea, where Dennis, you and I lived for some time, you have the president who is Muslim. You have the head of parliament, or, at the time the vice president was Christian. You have holidays in Guinea. You have more Christian holidays in Guinea than you have anywhere else in West Africa. Why is that? Why is it that in Liberia, you do not have a single Muslim holiday? You have a vice president of Liberia now who campaigned for the creation of a Christian autocracy in Liberia. She has never come back to recount those statements. Never come back to say, well, I didn't mean to do this. So this is the country that we have. So until we realize that we have to have fundamental laws that respect my rights, that respect your rights, unification for me is an evasive concept.
Thank you. Mr. Jokai, and then we go to our comments.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to pick up from where you highlighted important historical events in our political history, Dennis, when you talk about the different events, the Rest Riot and all of those issues, the different coup d'etats. I just wanted to say that that is not really something that is just common to Liberia's political history. If you take Nigeria, for example, you have so many coup d'etats. You had the Biafra War. But what they did in their country is to chart a course to be able to deal with the issue and redefine their politics. That's what they did, so that they don't go back to those age-old strategies of hurting each other and hurting their nation. Shedding blood or whatsoever you may term it. So in Liberia, that's the lesson for us. Those are the events that characterize our governance and political history for a long period of time. The question now is, how can we address that issue so that we don't go back to those dark days, those negative events that impacted us so badly as a country? And if you look at that in the context of our unification and integration conversation, I think that the government has a greater responsibility to play, because there are two axes that we should be conversing along here. The first one should be about a review of our national symbols, and then to take a look at who we are in terms of our identity, no matter where we come from. We need to be clear about our conversation. That should be an axis along which we should converse deeper. We should also look at the other side that has to do with the role of the government, making sure that social services are provided not in the selective mode, and not setting people or an elite few benefiting from the resources of the nation, because nobody who's unhappy will be talking about unification or integration by any way. If you have a man and he has his family, he doesn't have a job, and his wife doesn't have any form of empowerment, and they have children, they can't even have access to education, it's not affordable, access to healthcare. You can be talking to them about integration. or unification. That's not possible. That's why I said we have to discuss unification and or integration in the context of the social services, because the essence of having the statute that aims to bring Liberians together is about celebrating social, economic, and political progress of our nation. That speech that Anthony read from Topman 1952, that's exactly what it was about. It was about making sure that we chart a course that we look towards making sure that people have the kind of economic standing in the country that will make them happy to embrace each other, that people have access to basic social services that will make them happy to embrace each other. People have access to political activities in a way that will make them happy to embrace each other. All of those things sum up to the progress of the nation. And so you can discuss in that context the issue of unification and integration. And justice has to be for all. It has to be served. It is key. It is at the fulcrum of the conversation when we're talking about integration, because justice cannot be for the highest bidder. And for a long time, that has been the situation in our country. It is served at different levels based on people, political, social standing. There are several instances in our country we all can make reference to. We have to work on those on the axis of the government's responsibility to helping to facilitate a unified nation. In the absence of those, you cannot have a unified nation. You will have an unhappy group of people, and it will be difficult for them to unite. It will be difficult for them to agree. It will be difficult for them to forge any form of unification in our country. So there's a lot to do, and that should characterize the frank conversation we all have talked about. Everybody here have said that we should be able to chart a course. Take, for example, our Constitution. The civics was withdrawn from our schools. You can imagine there are children going through high school without knowing anything about what government is, government's responsibility to them, and what their own responsibility should be as citizens of their country, to the development of their country, to the security of their country. You don't have it. Article 10 of the Constitution provides that the Constitution should be published, it should be disseminated, and its principles should be taught in institutions of learning. That is not happening, because the Constitution must guarantee what is supposed to be done by the government for the people. But as it stands, the majority of the people who are languishing in poverty, they see government differently the way you and I see it, because we understand the role of government, the role of the people, but they don't. So they see government as a group of people doing them favor. So even when they steal their own money from their own resources, the people bring their own money back to them and behave like they are doing service. And they use that to perpetuate themselves in power at the disadvantage of the people. So you cannot have unity in a convoluted system like that. It's something that is not working for us. So we need to start a new course. We need a national conversation. The government has to create the environment. Civil society has to be stronger. We as individual Liberians, we have to have a conversation like the one we're having on the platform here tonight, continuously. We have to leave the toxic political conversation for some time and talk about the real issues that are affecting the lives of the people of the country, and how we can urge the government and every stakeholder to be able to play a role in giving the country the rebirth that we all envisage.
Thank you. And Mr. Sia, please, we're announcing the time now for our calls. But before that, we're going to get into some of our comments. So call us if you are there. The number is on the screen there, 605-313-6004. The code is 791403. Call and tell us, what does Independence or Unification Day mean to you? And how can we accomplish true integration and unification? Augustine Tamba said, good morning, focus on Liberia. Happy Unification Day, Liberians. I pray we use this day to retrospect on things that have divided us into 14 years of civil war as a nation, be it tribes, religion, politics. Let us come together and make it work. As the common saying goes, united we stand, divided we fall. Happy Unification. Those following focus on Liberia arrived from my slum community in district number 6. I don't think that's a slum community, Mr. Tamba. That's a vibrant community. Darling, what would say Robert Kura sums it up all. End of story. And also saying, Mohammed Sharif, thank you, sir. And she's also asking, unification of what? Is it salary disparity? Darling say, unification of what? Unification of extreme poverty, lack of electricity, unification of bad rules, unification of poor healthcare, unification of poor education system, unification of joblessness, unification of what? Well, Franklin said, can the panel share some light on the historicity of the term? Yes, we did that. So thank you, Franklin, for bringing that up. Roland Free said, unification is not an event, it is a process. And when I said I didn't agree, Darling said, Dennis, we understand you are one of those who gets satisfied with little things. Yeah, Darling, I've been hungry so long, so every little thing can get me going.
And Dennis, somebody is coming after you. Yeah, Dennis, please don't forget that you have a great lady on the panel. Smart, my man. Why are you keeping your feet tight?
No.
See, now you're smiling. See, it's working.
Okay, so again, somebody's coming after me and said, "Don't cut the reverend off. You hate to hear the truth, Mr. Liar Man," and that's me. He said, Ellen said, Liberia is a relaxed country. David Vesely, I strongly support the rebirth of the country Liberia. John
Let me read the one then from Mr. Croman. We are not unified. I think we should not celebrate any unification day until we get the right people with the right attitude. In fact, we are now developed more than we are united. Example, the CPP is finding it difficult to unite and now suffering from such disunity. Great point there.
John Mason said Unification Day was an excuse for the elite to have a national party.
Yeah, from Powerhouse Dennis. What is this man saying? Thousands of native brats in America, maybe from America, okay, America since 1990 do have access to America, but are not making any useful contribution to themselves and their villages in Liberia. That was what Reverend Kruger was saying. Hey, there are thousands of Liberians who don't have work permit. They are here struggling. He said, well, the ones that were brought here, what are they doing in Liberia?
Darling also said there was Liberia before 1822, just that it was not called Liberia. When the slaves arrived, no, they are ex-slaves. When the ex-slaves arrived in 1822, they met people on that land. It's like America saying Columbus discovered America. How do you discover people? Nonsense. Roland Free said if the government should have a role in terms of unification, then the opposition should also have a role. What do you think should be the role of both? You know, the opposition and the government. And Jackie said it well. We all have a role to play in making sure. Mr. Sia, do we have any color?
Yes, we have a caller here that is Whitmon Ketter. Let me see if I can bring him in here quickly. All right, Mr. Ketter, you are live. Go ahead. I saw your comment there. I was looking for you to read it, talking about Nigeria stay in crisis. Go ahead, Mr. Ketter. Mr. Ketter, are you there?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I listened to Brother Joker who made reference to Nigeria putting in certain measure after the Biafra war that got the country stable. Mr. Joker should understand there's a war in Nigeria, in the northern part of Nigeria. Boko Haram, we see what's happening, and they even result into terrorist attack in the major cities in Nigeria. So those things are still in Nigeria. Speaking of unification in Liberia, I think we are far from there yet. The fact that some of our brothers will even identify on this platform that a Muslim holiday could be unifying Liberia. No, I think we should start to look at ourselves first as Liberians, outside of Liberia. Look at what happened here among us in the diaspora. We cannot even hold as a people in the diaspora. Our national organization cannot hold together. The tribal organization in this country hold better than the national organization. You go to the NIMA function, they raise more money, they are united. You go to the crown function, the Mandingo function, the setup function, they raise money. But you come to the national function, everybody has to take their own spot. And I think we should look at ourselves and see where we are going wrong. Government will not make us united. We have to sit down and discuss this thing in ways that we know will find a way forward. Giving us holiday will not make us united. It has nothing to do with our one of this religion got holiday, the other religion don't have holiday, so it got nothing to do with it. It has something to do with our identity. Who are we as a people, a nation? Who are we? Because some people will consider themselves Guinean one day, the next day they are Liberian. Some people will consider themselves, oh, I ain't following Liberian people think. A typical Liberian, asking, oh, man, got Liberian association, or they say, oh, my man, I ain't following Liberian people think, man, but you are Liberian, but you say you're not following Liberian people think. Yeah. Who are you? So we gotta look at ourselves. Yes, sir.
Mr. Kettle, so what does unification mean to you?
To be honest with you, unification, we should use this time to reflect. And, you know, when the indigenous people were separated from Morovia, and, you know, sir, the people tried to bring them back, bring them to get them inclusive or included in the day-to-day activity of the country, the government. But it was done with deception, because once they get the established unification, after that time, we still saw deep segregation between the indigenous and the American Liberians. Up to now, if the country was unified, the southeastern region would not be cut off almost 7 months in a year from the rest of the country. Because the country was not unified, that's why the people that established that nation or ruled that nation for over 150 some years did not include the rest of the country. They never carried development up there. Schools were not there. So I think, like I said, we should continue to reflect on that.
Thank you, Mr. Kettle.
I just wanted to say something.
Jackie wanted to come in first, and then you can come in. But Mr. Sia, do we have any more callers?
No, that was the only caller.
Go ahead, Jackie. Oh, sorry, Jackie.
So it seems as if we're just going around in circles, because when we were talking about unification and integration, you know, it's almost like when we say diversity and inclusion, right? Diversity is being invited to the dance, right? Inclusion is being asked to dance, right? You can have diversity all you want, but inclusion is being asked to. So what I'm saying is that we were saying that, oh, it's the indigenous people talking about poverty, and that because the people are poor and they are marginalized and they don't feel that they are part of the system. I don't agree that it's poverty. And I will tell you why, Dennis. It's because, like I said, I travel a lot in other African countries, and I see very poor people. I took a student to the hospital, and she paid over $100. And the taxi driver went back and demanded the money because he knew that the money was not the amount she should have paid. She should have paid only $20. We have seen extraordinary kindness and people returning money who are poor. So you don't relegate an entire group of people and say, oh, they're poor. So therefore, you know, they are marginalized. They're not part of what it is. When you talk about this opposition or the opposition is splitting apart, as somebody said, just how we are having a frank discussion about what it means to be integrated. We have never have a frank discussion about power. We did that the other day, Dennis. So we said that everybody's scrambling for this power, right? Maybe what we need to do is to bring all the parties and say, what does integration mean to you? Because if we look at it, every group, whatever political party it is like they are fighting for this golden apple. They're fighting to get to this house, like we said the last time, right? And they have only one door, and everybody's fighting to go through that door. But nobody is saying, maybe we should open the windows. Maybe we should build another door. You know, and it's the same thing when it comes to women. I'm sorry to bring this up, but it is almost like women become an afterthought, right? People be like, oh, maybe we should have a woman on the show. Any woman will do. That is not inclusion. You're only trying to make your panel diverse. Inclusion is having a competent person, male or female, that can hold their own. So what I'm saying, going back to whether changing our names, I do think that there are some names that we have to change. We have to be able to say Liberia is composed of two polypolitic, right? The indigenous and the Americo-Liberians. And we need to come together so that the names, the symbols of the country should be a reflection of both. But until we have this national conversation, even when we are asking, we have the literary hour, right? And we are saying to Liberians, why don't you write a page? Just says, what does Liberia mean to me? We have gotten two, because people have not sat down to say, what does Liberia mean to me? When I say I'm going home, what does it mean to say I'm going home? So all these things, we will go in circles. As I said, we cannot go back and change the past. Liberian past is the past. We need to acknowledge it and move forward. And we have to have a frank discussion about moving forward. Whether it's changing the symbols or not, Dennis, we will go in circles, but we have to define what this transformation means when we transform Liberia.
And we have to face it. We got one more caller on the line.
Yep, let me bring that caller in, and then we can bring Mr. Joker in here. Caller, your name and where you're joining us from, and quickly to the issues.
Yeah, my name is Darling Wawu. I'm calling from Worcester, Massachusetts.
All right, welcome. Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, I just thought to make to add something to what the Reverend said. You know, when one of the reasons why the free slaves were settled in Liberia was the fact that after the French Revolution, after the slaves drove the French out of Haiti, America panicked. They got scared that the revolt that drove the French slave masters out of Haiti, it's possible that if they had too many black slaves or free slaves in America, they could revolt to and maybe ask for too many rights or take what they got. So they thought it was to reduce the black population, thereby shipping some of them to Africa. And that blacks being resettled in Liberia was not out of love. It was out of pure hatred. They didn't even want them yet, and that they didn't even want them to become citizens. They were never citizens. Those people fought in World War I and World War II. They fought the Civil War, and they were still not even considered citizens of this country that they were fighting and died for. So with that being said, I just want to say something about Unification Day. Like I wrote a piece over there that says, what are we celebrating? What unification? As we speak, Monrovia, as tiny as it is, we don't have electricity on our tiny island. We don't have roads, no food, no jobs. The only thing you hear young people talking about in that place is, I will say, muya and party politics. Every loop and corner you say in Monrovia is some Ataisha, people are talking politics. It all started with this whole thing called unification. When those free slaves came to Liberia, they everything humanly possible to keep the Aborigines in darkness and uneducated, so that they will continue to loot the resources as they did for over 130 years. So with the whole thing about unification, I think that was a flop. Tobin wanted more young girls to be taken on a ship and to smoke cigar and have fun with them. So he thought it was to say, you know what, if we can make people to feel like they are part of us, we can have access to their beautiful daughters and do what we want to do with them. So the whole unification is fiasco. Imagine this guy was president for 27 years. At the time, Liberia GDP could be compared to that of Japan, where one writer even said we had growth without development. It was Thomas regime that Liberia should have been developed, because we had so much revenue and so little people. Our population was like nothing. So the whole thing about unification is just a myth.
Thank you.
And today, we are more divided than ever before.
Hello there.
And it all started when the free slaves,
You wrote a comment that Dennis is a liar man. Do you hold that thought still, that he's a liar man?
No, what happened was you were trying to cut the Reverend short, and I didn't like that because he was striking some serious points, and I thought you were not in support of that. You wanted to call him out.
No,
you're a liar, but you're a good man.
We try to allow at least 2 minutes, so that other can have the chance to talk.
Yeah, but in so doing, if somebody is striking a chord and saying something very important, you have to give them a little time so that they can learn.
You were
So,
talking about
they
equal
will-
opportunities, yeah, and then you want us to give somebody extra time.
yeah, equal opportunity, but when somebody is saying something very important that means a lot, you can't talk I think, because you're talking about equal opportunity. What is equal opportunity? People should have the right to know, to have access to certain information.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, darling. Because darling, your premise is I cut him off because I hate the truth. So maybe that's why he was saying. But thank you for your contribution.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Reverend Krua,
Yes, sir.
go ahead. But then, it was Joker and then Reverend Krua. You can make
Yeah, joke first.
Go ahead, Joker, and then Reverend Krua can come in.
I simply wanted to say to Kara, the first caller, that his points were salient, but I just wanted to differ that I didn't say that Nigeria is stable. The point I was trying to make was the comparison that those historical events that Dennis highlighted were not just unique to Liberia, because if you look at the political history of many of these African countries, they are replete with coup d'etats and other brutal and bloody events, and some of them try to walk away from through charting a national cause. And that's the point I was trying to make it about. I didn't mean that Nigeria is stable. I didn't say that. I'm aware of the occurrences which are not welcoming in Nigeria and other places. The other thing I wanted to say is that Liberia, we have complete inequality. And I'm just referencing the point where Jackie was talking about kindness and people being nice. In other countries, yes, if you travel, I also travel extensively doing election work in many of those countries. And the attitudes vary from one country to the other when you interact with citizens of those countries. Some of them are enlightening, some of them understand, even the setting their better boy in the market, interact with them, they will tell you exactly the extent of the love they have for their country by their action and the things they do. I do agree. But in Liberia, if we have to achieve this issue of progress in our social, political, and economic standing, we have to address the inequalities in our country. We can't overemphasize that in Liberia. There are people, communities, and individuals that are extremely poor in our country. Should not be happening at this time, especially given our size, the population, the resources in the country. I think what we have had is a deception on the part of those who we've entrusted with governance in our country. And then the country is not enlightening. Citizens are not aware. I've always stressed that they're not aware of their roles, their rights, and responsibilities. And we all agree on that we have to educate them. We have to have the conversation with them. We have to sit with them. We have to ask questions that will arouse, their thoughts and make them hungry for the kind of information that they need to make them better citizens. That's the kind of thing I was trying to talk about, but not in any demeaning or denigrating way about my compatriots. There was a time I said on radio, let me just chip this in, Dennis, maybe that could be the last. One time I said on the radio, I said, don't be fast to say that the Liberian male, the Liberian woman is poor when you see their living condition. Probably they are just satisfied with that, even if they can light the candle and just look their sleep, cut it off, ladder and sleep. If you were to ask that person, they could have a different version, that they are very happy with that kind of living condition. But you know that it is that they don't have understanding and that enlightenment, which becomes our responsibility and the responsibility of the government to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Kura. Before I come to you, let me read a few more comments here. Martin Wlamont Brown say, how can we preach unification when the country is entrenched with divisive and tribal politics? Darling, who just spoke, say you need a change of attitude first. Martin also writes, Dennis, for 100 years plus, the TWP segregated and marginalized the indigenous. When did we start realizing unification? I think unification is just about creating more holidays in the country because we haven't realized the true meaning of unification. Cool, Joseph, I agree with the sister, but would like to add that Liberians should learn to assimilate and accept diversity. The last one is from YouTube comment, equal opportunity for all Liberians, irrespective of ethnicity, is the best way to unify a country. There are more educated Liberians in the diaspora. The past is the past.
Yes. So first thing I want to say about the deception, I agree with the brother about deception. The deception continues even now with our country. And I think I agree with Jackie. Each one of us needs to step forward and not rely on the government, because the government is a servant. And as long as we give everything to the government, a government that doesn't even, that has a constitution and laws that only empowers and enrich them as it has been set up, it's not going to step forward to try to bring about unification. One of the myths I want to talk about when you talk about deception is the whole idea of free slaves. This whole free slave idea is a deception, because on March 26, 1790, when the United States decided that skin color was going to be a requirement for citizenship, they denigrated every person of color. It was not based on whether they were slave or free. The Native Americans and even free people who were born 5 generations that have not been slaves. So the more we keep talking about free slaves and free slaves, we fall into the trap, because in Liberia, if Liberia was actually truly created by free slaves, we would have had one monument in honor of liberators. We don't even have one monument for liberators, of people who try to abolish the slave trade in Liberia. And so that's the first thing. But I think moving forward, from my perspective, we have broken laws that were created to enrich and empower politicians. That was the aim of the American colonization. They said the object was to keep the slaves happy and serving their masters in the United States. For 20 years, it was white people that control the country. So I think we need to talk about rebirth and talk about we, the people, coming together in a sovereign national conference for us to decide what we want, not a politician coming to tell us this is what you have to get, because it's always going to be serving them and not serving the common good of the people. And until we can come together to do that, government is not going to do it for us.
Thank you so much, Reverend Krua. I want to thank all of you for this really healthy discussion. As all of you alluded to, the discussion we should be having a frank discussion on these issues. I mean, we are always reacting to the breaking news, what's happening now, and all politics. But really, these frank discussions are very, very necessary. I want to thank all of you for participating. Before, what I want as your closing statement, there's the question: what does unification integration mean to you, and what is the way forward? That's the question I want us to close with as your parting comments. And let me start with Mohammed.
That's a very important question. Unification and integration, which I believe within the context of Liberia is a very evasive concept. It's not something I think that is achievable, looking at everything that have happened. If you look at you look at 1847 to 1980, right? So everyone will agree that there needed to be a change. Although I disagree that change should have been violent. But when the change occurred, what did you have? You have the so-called natives now, who took control of their country. What did they do to their own country? They destroyed their country. They destroyed one another. So in 1983, that you just mentioned, Dennis, there was, the Nimba Ray, if you want to call it that, for the ethnic division in 1985, when a popular military general was killed and dismembered, for all of us to see. These are not unification, right? And in 1990, what happened? From 1989, beginning in 1989, you have an invasion of country, right? So it wasn't just the invasion, right? it was also all of the ethnic tensions and killings that went on. But if you want to go back again to 1980, right, you will say that those things that happened in 1980, right, germinated and evolved into a full-blown war in 1990. So, what does unification mean for each of us is something that we need to, in ourselves, be able to answer, right? So, for each, what does unification mean for you? So, for me, it means that justice for the minorities, justice for religious and ethnic minorities like myself, justice for everybody, right? Unless we have a judicial system that is the fulcrum, that is the focus of development, there's not going to be unification. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about changing our national symbols. We're going to change about erecting, monuments for, different types of people. As long as there is no transparent justice, it's going to be elusive.
Thank you. Jackie. Oh, Jackie, what does integration, unification mean to you, and what's the way forward?
Unification means a coming together. I agree with Mr. Sharif that we need law and order, we need justice, but I think that if we come together as a people, even the judges would be informed to better apply the law. The way forward, Dennis, how many of us have not watched social media and see the garbage on the streets? We see a house burning and we see all these young people just standing looking. Look, civics is taught in the school, but it's practiced in the street. Okay? There's nothing that stops us from getting brooms on Saturday and going on the streets and cleaning our surroundings. People do it up in the villages. They clean around them. We need for people to say, look, you forget about the United States. You say a country like, I don't know, Niger, a poor country, right? But they take pride in their country. We need to take pride in our country. We need to say, I'm a Liberian, and it has to mean something. I know that, like Mr. Sherry said, we all came from somewhere. And despite a lot of odds, we've built a country. Now, some of us may not be proud of it. Some of us may be proud of it. Some of us might say, I don't want to think about it anymore. But this is the place that God decided we should be. And because of that, Dennis, I feel that unification means a coming together of people of different groups coming together for one purpose, which is to uplift the nation. And I think that uplifting the nation means taking pride in who you are and in moving the country forward. They talk about civics. Civics is taught, like I said, in the schools. But Dennis, if you love your country and you're sucking an orange, you will not throw an orange on the street. The garbage that's piling in the street, it didn't pile up by itself. It didn't come from a vacuum. There are able-bodied people. I think November 29 is Tubman's birthday. You see the amount of young people who go on the beaches to just have good time. That could also be a day of national service. We need national service in that country because it will build patriotism in that country if we do national service. So I think that people might say there's no unification in the country. As I said before, it starts with us, each one of us. So let's take up a broom. If that's the way we're going to unite, if somebody sees us sweeping, they will come and see us. Nobody takes pride in a dirty country. And by us sitting on social media and saying the country is dirty, we're waiting for Jefferson Koji, it may never happen. So what are you going to do? Stay in the filth? No, if you love your country, you're going to take action. So I think unification is action for a purpose, which is to uplift your country. That's what unification means to me.
Thank you. Reverend Kura.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with Sis Jackie more about doing something about unification, meaning action. But for me, I started with a different thing. We have to uplift the country, starting with the community where we live. We have to uplift the community, starting with the families that we come from. And so when I sit here and see thousands of Liberians in this country in winter, in the pandemic, that have not been allowed permits to work for years, and everybody think everything is fine. I think that's a problem. Those families are hurting here in the United States. It shouldn't be that way at all. When I see we talk about the laws of minorities and ethnic and religious minorities, but who makes the law is important. The people have to be the ones. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Liberia was established by people who were racist. It was established by slave owners, Bourgeois Washington, James Monroe, Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, etc. These were the executives of the American Colonization Society, and they had a reason of deception for creating this place. Liberia needs a rebirth that's going to uplift individuals to give equal opportunity. Liberia needs rebirth that's going to uplift families. When you have opposition politicians having homes in America, independent politicians having homes in America, ruling party people having homes in America, and making salaries that even American Congress people don't make, there is a problem. We need to come together. And for me, we call it the Free Liberia Movement, freeliberia.org. We're coming together, having conversations around the country because it is the who are in politics to get the power they have. And so, yes, let's start from the grassroots. But when we talk about lifting the country, we should not forget the family. We should not forget the individuals. We should not forget the source. And the United States has to pay damages for colonization.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I bring in Mr. CM about what unification means, his closing statement, we want to remind you that tomorrow at 1 p.m., Elder Gabriel Monga Zawiya will be here to make the case why he thinks Joseph Newman Boakai should head the CPP ticket and be president of Liberia. Then also at 3 p.m., we'll have some, we'll be focusing on the Ganta land disputes. Three gentlemen of who are all from Ganta will be here to make the case. I should mention they are from the Mandingo ethnic group, the group that has been aggrieved in the Ganta land case. They will be here to tell us what's going on there and what they are doing to resolve the situation. Then at 7 p.m., we're going to be talking about trash in Monrovia. So trash, the dirt is piling up in Monrovia and its environs. We're going to be talking about that. What is responsible? How can we clean it? What is the impact it's having? It's right here on Focus on Liberia, 7 p.m. tomorrow. You don't want to miss our Saturday program. It's all packed. Mr. Sear, what does unification mean to you? What is integration? And what's the way forward? Your closing remarks.
Dennis, sadly, I don't know what unification means to me. But what I can say is, what should unification be? What should it mean to us? What should be the meaning of it? That I have answers for. And I would say unification should be the art of demonstrating patriotism. I know we throw the word around and sometimes it tend to lose its meaning. That is basically how do we demonstrate our love for our country. And let us be reminded that without the people, we don't have a country. And, I don't think when we say country, it's just the geographic space, right? That's the people. And have we demonstrated love for each other as a people? Somebody was speaking, somebody will say, can you go to the Liberian event? Oh, I don't want to be part of your Liberian thing and all that. So we have now been able to demonstrate patriotism to an extent that we are proud of our country to do the right thing. I mean, how can you say someone loves a country? The person is charged with the responsibility of collecting government revenue and putting it in government coffers, but that person pockets the money. The other day, there was a discussion here about $6 million that were taken by a few Liberians, though the money was intended to renovate our hydro to provide electricity for the vulnerable in Monrovia. Those who have access to that cash, to $6 million of that money, they have to take the Norwegian government that try to help us to say, hey, you took some money here that you should not have taken. So then that is not patriotism. This is how we strangulate many in poverty. So unification should be that we are connecting our people by roads. It should be that we are providing basic health care for our people, even in the hamlets, so that when they are sick, they can get cured. It should be about education, that the little girl in that village, then as you used to cross by 6 rivers before you could get to that school. Have we changed that? I'm not sure. I think that's the same situation in Dodokan. So these are the things we should be fighting to unify. Let us be unified by access to healthcare, by access to education. These are the things. And also, then we can't forget about justice. And, we have to be able to respect each other. And then when we're talking about the distribution of the budget, if you look at the president budget, you look at the vice president budget, you look at the money being allotted for legislators. Legislators alone are getting around $33 million of the budget. Guess why it's going to the counties? Then about $10 million going to all the 15 counties, but about 103 lawmakers that represent the 15 counties are getting $33 million. That is not how you unify a country. Until we can trend this path of exhibiting patriotism, connecting our people by roads, providing healthcare, education, unification means nothing to us. Because in the absence of these things, we are not united. We are a bunch of angry people who don't want to listen to anything. Some people will not go to church because they don't have clothes. So they will not get united with their fellow parishioners. So these are the issues we want to be talking about, Dennis, when we are speaking of unification. But again, people are united by parties. They defend their own devils. We are missing it, and we are missing it big time. Dennis, I'm afraid for that country, but we are here to talk the issue. Thank you.
And I still have hope, and it's that hope that keeps me here at Focus on Liberia. Let us not forget, and I'm going to play historian for a little bit here, that the whole concept of unification integration was not in a vacuum. We have a real elite class of ex-slaves mainly that ruled the country and subjugated part of it. And so when the disparity became very wide, Todma came and said, let's have a unification and integration policy. But that was, Todma was not doing it to benefit the people, it was to benefit himself, because he himself came to power almost by accident, right? Because President Barclay, who came to power also by accident because Charles D.B. King and his vice president were removed because of the Fanatical crisis. So Barclay handpicked Todman, who was almost someone that he was going to use. That, hey, this guy can be president. He doesn't know much. I can still be behind there and pushing the buttons. So when Todman got in power, he decided to go the other way, right? And he knew he did not have the vote of the elite class, the American Liberians. So what he decided to do, bring in the natives to become my base so I can get votes. So extended the voting right to women and also opened the country up to the indigenous. A good thing, even though he had bad intention for it, but it was a good thing. So I think that was a very good thing for the country to be unified, to integrate so that we all be one people. Earlier, 2 years ago, I wrote a poem entitled Liberia Means Freedom. And what I tried to do in that poem is, whether you came by, by road, walking through the forest like my ancestors, the Kru speaking group, or the Mende speaking, or the Ma, whatever, or you came by boat like the American Liberians, or you even came later like the recaptured slave, we all Liberians said, because of freedom, we all converge on this land. And so we must do everything because that country is for freedom. We all came there for freedom. Whether you ran from the Songhay, the Malaya Empire, or where you came from, you were in search of some form of freedom. Either freedom from hunger, freedom from oppressors, freedom from this repressive monarchies, or freedom from slavery. And so unification should be all of us coming together in spite of our diversity to move the country forward. And this cannot happen without justice, as all of you said, without the equal distribution of the national cake. And that's what we should prioritize. I want to thank you all for your time tonight. On behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we say happy Unification Day. And we're going to end with our song that says, We are all Liberians. Good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our